All of us are under a curse, but we don't realize it. What we see is hidden from us. For the longest time, I arrogantly believed that my taxi and I were Berlin experts. The unexpected horrors I've seen while working night shifts are beyond your wildest imagination. You have to understand that when it's dark, people are much less self-conscious and may even reveal a new side of themselves. My 15 years in the industry did not prepare me for this one night. Coming from a small Kurdish village like I do, Berlin is a big change. I've come to appreciate my job here, but the city isn't without its goddamn cursed sides, and those are largely attributable to its peculiar inhabitants, who can be pleasant and normal during the day, but take a sinister turn once the sun goes down. I've picked up an eye for detail on the road. Sometimes I find myself driving a member of a notorious crime family. You wouldn't believe the number of them in Berlin. However, I cannot pass judgment. As for me, I just drive. In all my years of driving, there has been only one night that has left me feeling sick to my stomach, leaving such a bitter aftertaste that nothing I eat gives me any pleasure. I first met Julius on that fateful evening. When I am not dispatched, you can find me in line with the other taxis at the Neukölln subway stop. Sometimes I'll wait for hours, chatting with other drivers over coffee and cigarettes. We share shallow anecdotes about our days and wager on who will order the best dinner. Once I drove a man to a city 200 miles away, and we made as much in 3 hours as we would have in 3 nights. Even though we never left Berlin, Julius's fare was about the same. I didn't bother him about money at the end of the night. It was a typical cold and foggy night for early March. Nights like this make you wish you didn't have to go to work like I do. That's what I thought when the wind blew in unexpectedly through the open passenger door of my taxi. The warmth returned quickly as the dark-haired young man with the matching dark eyes smiled at me. He asked, "Are you free for a ride?" I don't know if this man was 20 or 36, but I do recall vividly how he made me feel at ease just by being in his presence. He sported slacks and a black jacket over a crisp white button-down. Even though I have no fashion expertise, I can tell that his clothes have been expertly fitted to his body. Possibly this is why I believed him when he said the ride would be expensive, but he had the money to cover it. Naturally, I agreed to assist him and asked if he had any bags he needed assistance with. "Just this," he said, smiling as he held up a small wrapped package about the size of a book. "Oh, well, I'll just set it in my lap." He took a seat in the front passenger area. Some folks do that, typically the loners who have nothing better to do with their time than chat. "How about if I show you around? Where do you live?" Yes, I did inquire. He buckled up in the car. "No, that's not it. If it's okay with you, I'll just explain the steps as we go along." And he actually did that. I didn't mind as long as I could keep the meter moving. Dill. When he saw my name and number on the card I keep in the dashboard, he remarked, "That's a nice name." As I turned the key in the ignition, I said, "Thank you. It means a lot." I checked my rearview mirror to make sure it was safe to leave the line of cars, but stopped when I saw that they had all disappeared. Not only the other cabs either. There was no one left. The metro station's entire plaza appeared to be empty. I gave Julius a quick glance, but he seemed oblivious to the situation, continuing to smile. I thought I saw movement in the window reflection next to him for a second, but it vanished as soon as I blinked. "Hart, that's gorgeous," he remarked offhand. I swallowed and rubbed my eyes. I realized my mistake after taking another look outside. There were people with bags rushing to their cars, taxi drivers standing around with a cigarette, drunken teenagers loudly chatting. The situation was typical. It was well past 3 o'clock in the morning. Night shifts are when these incidents typically occur. Your mind gets foggy. I couldn't risk losing such a lucrative fare by letting this man notice. He didn't seem to notice, so we continued talking. The meaning of my name, Julius, is completely lost on me. The humor was shared. "Well, it's nice to meet you, Julius," I greeted him sincerely. On our way out, we drove by one of my fellow cabbie friends. As we drove away, he watched us with a distressed expression on his pale face. As I walked past him, I felt a tightening in my stomach, but I couldn't put my finger on why. I'm not a very talkative guy, but I do strike up the occasional conversation with passengers about the weather or the latest football game. People who open up to me the most are also the ones with whom I tend to speak the least. Once in a while, however, I'll meet a special person who doesn't simply talk to fill the silence in the car, but who is genuinely and truly interested in the lives of others. That's just how Julius was. Special. How often do you have to work overnight? On a particularly gloomy stretch of road, he inquired. During the week only. Friday and Saturday nights are where it's at, I said. The rest of your weekend will be spent sleeping. I shared his amusement at his joke. Well, sleep really is a great blessing. After a long night, I said, there's nothing better than resting your head on a soft pillow. I totally get it. He laughed, but it sounded fake, and he was clearly trying to hide his disappointment. Ironic, wouldn't you say? We put in long hours at the office in order to make ends meet, but as a result, we rarely have any free time to enjoy life. Despite his self-assurance, he was also a bit of a downer. His magnetic personality reminded me of my sibling. On the other hand, I recognized a bit of myself in him. I let out a deep sigh. If it were up to me, I'd keep things straightforward. A cozy cottage in the country, complete with a yard. I want to grow my own food and maybe raise a few chickens. Then I completed his thought. With an eyebrow raised, Julius looked at me. For an instant, our gazes locked, and then I had to divert mine back to the road. His eyes were almost completely black, like pupils. It may sound creepy, but trust me, it wasn't. It was like I'd experienced it before. Distracted by our conversation, I didn't notice for a while that we were traveling on streets I was unfamiliar with. Without any lights on, you drive between several stories of buildings. It was, after all, the dead of night, and it was very unsettling to wander around in complete unfamiliarity. Being a taxi driver has given me a sense of familiarity with every corner of the city. Julius cut me off mid-pondering by saying, "Well, something must have happened down that road of yours to end up in the biggest city in Germany then." The joke was on me. My family is the reason I'm here. They wouldn't survive in a village with chickens, I unexpectedly said. It's very rare that I trust a complete stranger with my deepest thoughts and feelings. Actually, I'm not very good at letting people in. "Oh!" Leaning back a little, Julius yelled, "Yes, you are a family man. I know that about you. We sacrifice everything for our loved ones, right?" I felt a momentary twinge of discomfort at the strangeness of his delivery, but I shrugged it off. "Always." There was a grin on Julius's face. We had to cut Julius off as we had finally arrived at his first stop. He had to leave his mysterious package at this little kiosk. "I'll be right back." "Wait here," he said, staring at me with an unexpectedly menacing expression. A kiosk is essentially a miniature corner store, in case you were wondering. You can't see in too well because the windows are stacked with beer crates and bottles. I don't know what happened while Julius was in there, but after a few minutes, all of the lights in the store went out. The tiny storefront, which was the only source of illumination on this otherwise pitch-black street, seemed to vanish before my eyes. Because everything seemed fine and I felt so at ease, I made the strange decision to trust this complete stranger. I felt fine before he got out of the car, but something was off. Anxiety and paranoia have merged into a new state of mind. There was a voice inside of me that was screaming at me to run away. I tried to locate my cell phone but was unable to do so in time. I had my foot on the gas and was about to pull away when suddenly the trunk of my car opened. With the same warm grin in his familiar eyes, Julius jumped back inside. Only now he was sitting behind me instead of beside me. The question, "Where to now, my friend?" I asked nervously, hoping he wouldn't catch on that I was about to leave. Why I didn't just tell him to leave me alone is beyond me. There was no way I could muster up the necessary bravery. "I appreciate you addressing me as that." He took a deep breath and said, "I'd like for us to be friends, Dill. Just follow the street for now." I got back behind the wheel and began navigating the streets per my passenger's instructions. At long last, I felt like I was back in a familiar place. It was time to return to Nocon. "My friend Dill, returning to the family discussion at hand, how is your relationship with your son?" For a while, I said nothing at all. As an ex-friend put it, we used to be very close. I laughed and said, "Young adults are notoriously difficult to work with." "Ah, yes, young adults. I take it that things with your daughter are going swimmingly now." I had to pay close attention to the road because we were once again driving through a dark residential area in the past. My daughter is a great kid, but she's been acting strangely as of late. Just not herself yet, probably a teen myself. I paused in my speech. It took me a moment to process what had just happened because we had been driving around and talking for so long. He had no idea that I also had a son in addition to his daughter. Oh yes, she's more emotionally distant now. She's been isolating herself in her room and barely eating. That's unfortunate. Even so, you still love them, right? He said. I was shaking with nervousness. It was a huge mistake on my part to confide in this man all night. Even though I knew something was wrong, I had to keep my cool. He may be connected with some very unsavory people. Oh, I love my loved ones. But don't we all? I answered nervously. It's a resounding, no you don't. I turned around to make eye contact with him in the rear window, startled by his abrupt change in tone. The guy I'd been cruising around with all night, Julius, had disappeared. I met the eyes of an alien species for the first time. His previously affable dark eyes gave off an entirely unsettling vibe now. His eyes appeared to be empty, as if someone had jammed a screwdriver into each one. Fungal growths had invaded the holes in his face. Disgusted by this grotesquely incorrect appearance, I took my eyes off the road and narrowly avoided colliding with a parked car. I made an excellent U-turn, giving myself time to gather my composure and take a deep breath. My heart felt like it was going to burst through my chest. The hour was very late. There was no sleep for me. For a long time, I went without drinking water. I told myself I must be hallucinating. However, I was unable to face myself in the mirror once more. Asking, "Is there something wrong, my friend?" The man let out a hearty giggle. Upon reflex, I turned to look and saw the same familiar Julius sitting there, a broad grin on his face. Mumbling, "Yes, sorry," was all I could muster. It's been a very long night. I made a conscious effort to regain composure, to which the respondent inquired, "What did you do inside that kiosk?" Embarrassed at my sudden boldness, I asked, even if that face was just a hallucination, this man still had unauthorized access to information about my kids. When we first met, he seemed genuinely curious about me. He wasn't actually trying to pry anything out of me. He had no need to learn anything new. I don't understand what this guy wanted from me. I had to find a way to get rid of him without getting caught. So I got in my car and headed for my brother's place. My brother is a very powerful and formidable man, a suspicious man who uses violence on the regular. He would know what to do if this Julius posed a threat. I was worried that Julius had fallen asleep with his eyes closed, so I abruptly made a course correction. My whole body was trembling, but I tried to act confident. Julius's eyes opened as if he could read my mind, and I knew then that whatever happened tonight would ruin the rest of my life. When Julius suddenly said in a hushed voice, "Don't try to be smart, Dill," everyone was taken aback. My hands looked like they were going to split open from clenching the wheel so tightly. "I figured out your destination. Don't. I have no desire to meet your sibling. Certainly not tonight," he pronounced. I started to say, "How do you—" but then stopped myself. "You must have noticed me when looking at oneself in a mirror. Unlike some people, you did not scream. Personally, that appeals to me." When he said, "You know, I can just be myself around you," he smiled. My focus shifted to the back window. There was no hallucination involved. There are no words to adequately describe this thing, but I am certain it was not human. Its hideout was human flesh. Now I'm going to be sincere with you, because I genuinely appreciate your company. The delivery wasn't tonight's priority. That's unrelated to what I do. The focus of tonight was on learning more about you. My mind was reeling with a million questions, but all I could think to ask was, "Why me?" He laughed once more. "Oh, don't fret, my good pal. This entire vehicle is trembling. You won't be hurt by me, I promise. Your loved ones are at stake here, damaged in some way. I knew you were carrying it because of the scent." I gulped some air down. To paraphrase, "If you're not going to hurt me, what else do you want from me?" Julius was grinning at me in the mirror, showing off his decaying teeth. Being who I am, I often feel isolated. It's not terrible that corruption runs in your family. If you know them, perhaps we could meet up sometime. The road we were on was deserted. Even though there was no one around to ask for assistance, I applied the brakes. I got carsick. but not from a whiplash injury. You're questioning whether to jump out of the car. I'm starting to wonder if you can outrun me, he sighed. But you won't. I inhaled deeply. Silently. No, I won't, was my response. The reason being, because you love your family. After a moment, I nodded. As he smiled again, I froze in place. And because you notice that the eyes of your daughter have recently started to look a little bit like mine, he said. Perhaps, my friend, you should take a look in the reflection in her eyes. Are your eyes open? So, another spine-chilling tale from the dark side of Berlin. If you found yourself on the edge of your seat, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to our channel for more terrifying stories. But wait, there's more. Want to share your own eerie encounters, read others' stories, and discuss everything supernatural? Join our exclusive Telegram group. The link is in the description below. Dive into the mysterious world of haunting experiences and connect with fellow thrill seekers. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes peeled for the unknown lurking in the shadows.